Hello and welcome to my Siege of Orgrimmar raid guide. My name is Aliena, and in this video I'll show you all you need to know about the Fallen Protectors, the second boss in this new raid instance. We completed this fight with 2 tanks, 6 healers and 17 DPS, but similar raid configurations may work just as well. In this encounter, you face 3 foes at once that do not share the same health pool. When you push a protector past either 66% or 33% health, they'll trigger desperate measures, spawning different spirits that will plague your raid with new abilities. It's incredibly important to never push more than 1 protector at a time past the threshold, as that would likely mean a raid wipe. To defeat this encounter, you must kill all 3 enemies at the same time, or at least within 15 seconds of killing the first one, or else they'll heal up by 20%. Your opponents are called Rook Stonetoe, He Softfoot, and Sun Tenderheart. You first want to bring Rook to 66%, then He, then Sun. Repeat the same order for 33%, but always make sure no more than 1 reaches the threshold at a time. When engaging the encounter, one of your tanks should pick up Rook, the other tank should pick up He. Sun just kind of casts different abilities on the whole raid, so she does not need to be tanked. Your raid should be spread out loosely around the room. Rook's abilities are as follows. First off, he uses Corrupted Brew, which is a beer keg missile that is marked clearly by an impact point on the ground before it hits. This should be avoided whenever possible. Secondly, he uses Vengeful Strikes, which will stun and inflict some moderate damage in a cone in front of him, so make sure no one but the tank is ever in front of Rook. Lastly, he uses Clash, which charges a random person and then performs a spinning crane kick attack that shouldn't be stood in. The animation for this is very obvious, so it can easily be avoided. He Softfoot has these abilities. Occasionally, he'll use Garrote on a random raid member. This is a bleed effect and it persists until he performs desperate measures. Secondly, he uses Gouge on the tank. If the tank faces He Softfoot when the Gouge goes off, he'll be incapacitated and he will run off to kill some poor raid member. But if the tank faces away when Gouge goes off, it'll just knock them back a short distance and nothing else happens, so it's very important that the He tank pays close attention to this. Lastly, he will randomly poison little areas on the ground that inflict damage when stood in and shouldn't be stood in. Sun is mentioned as a caster. She alternates between using 3 different spells. First up, Shah-Seer. This is basically a Mind Seer used on a random raid member. The graphical effect is not all that obvious, so keeping the raid loosely spread is recommended to avoid having everyone getting hit by Shah-Seers. Her next ability is Shadow Word Bane. This is a dispellable dot placed on random raid members. It starts out with 3 stacks, and if it's not removed before the damage ticks once, it'll split into 2 different targets. If again it is not removed, it'll split one last time for a total of 3 different dots. It's very important your healers dispel this as soon as possible, preferably before it ticks at all. You can assign healers to dispelling different groups to make this a little easier. If you get overwhelmed by dots, you can mass dispel them. Her last ability is Calamity, which deals right-wide AoE damage. It also gets rid of any leftover Shadow Word Banes, though ideally you shouldn't have many up at any given time. These are all the abilities during the normal phases. Next, let's talk about the Desperate Measures. When Rook hits 66% and performs Desperate Measures, he'll disappear and 3 spirits appear in his place. The tank previously on Rook must pick up all 3 of them. The embodied Misery Spirit will use Defile Ground on the tank, inflicting some damage, knocking them back, and leaving a puddle on the ground that shouldn't be stood in. The embodied Sorrow Spirit uses Inferno Strike on random raid members, placing a yellow arrow over their head and a circle around them. After a few seconds, Inferno Strike will deal split damage between every raid member in the circle, much like Static Shock on Lei Shen. This can be prevented with immunities such as Deterrence, etc. If no immunity can be used, at least your ranged DPS and healer should stack up for this to split the damage. Try to pay attention to any Shah-Seers happening at the same time, and try not to bring them into the stack pile. Embodied Gloom uses Corruption Shock, which is a Chain Lightning type of ability that deals damage to random players and anyone within 4 yards of them. This can be interrupted. While you should focus down the Embodied Sorrow Spirit first, you should leave a couple of interrupters on Gloom, so none or very little of the Chain Lightnings go off. Misery can be killed last, as it does not really pose a threat. Once all 3 spirits are killed, Rook will reappear and needs to be picked up once more. Next, your DPS should focus on getting He Softfoot to 66% to trigger his Desperate Measures. This will spawn an Embodied Anguish Spirit, which is not tankable and instead focuses a random raid member with Mark of Anguish, which roots them and inflicts increasing dot damage every second. The player with the mark gains a special ability button that lets them pass the mark to someone else. The mark should be passed off when the damage becomes near unhealable, but not too early, as every time a mark is passed, everyone in the raid gets a debuff that makes them take more shadow damage. Classes with good personal mitigation cooldowns make excellent targets to pass the marks to. You want to avoid passing it to tanks and healers. Once a spirit dies, the mark and all debuffs will be cleared. Obviously, the Embodied Anguish has DPS priority. Once the Anguish is dead, He Softfoot will reappear and needs to be picked up. When Sun hits 66%, she spawns 2 adds, Embody Despair and Embody Desperation. She'll also start channeling a spell called Dark Meditation that will persist until both adds are defeated. Dark Meditation does constant AoE damage to all players, but the damage is reduced if players are within her meditative field in the middle of the area, so everyone should stack up there as soon as she starts channeling. Despair and Desperation will be stationary outside the bubble, so they should be focused down by ranged DPS. They also spawn little adds that will come attack players in the middle of the room. Damage done to the little adds will also be taken by the big adds, so melee should focus these down. Once all adds are dead, your rage should immediately spread back out, as Rook will likely perform a spinning crane kick straight away. The same abilities will repeat when Rook, He, and Sun hit 33% health, so again, make sure to pace your DPS. After that's done, it's just a matter of bringing them to 0 at the same time. Rook, He, and Sun will not use their spinning crane kicks, poison, and calamity abilities during desperate measures, so you don't have to worry about stacking up. Those are all the tips that I have for the Fallen Protectors. Thank you for watching this guide. I hope it was helpful. I stream most of our raids and other gaming content over at Twitch. I'll put the URL in the description box, so come stop by sometime.